Fidel Castro, was born on the 13th of August 1926 in Birran, in Oriente, the easternmost province on the island of Cuba. His father was Ángel María Bautista Castro y Arguiz. Ángel was conscripted into the Spanish army in the early 1890s and subsequently was sent to Cuba to contribute to the effort to crush a second war of independence which had erupted there in 1895.
Fidel's father, Ángel, eventually became a wealthy sugarcane planter.
In 1911, Ángel Castro married María Argota y Reyes, and the couple had 5 children. After the collapse of this marriage, Ángel went on to have 7 more children with Lina Ruz González, a farm servant who became his second wife. They included Fidel and his younger brother Raúl.
Mi mamá fue hija de campesino muy pobre, no pudo ir a una escuela. Ella aprendió a leer y escribir sin ir a una escuela. Y mi papá también era analfabeto. No sabía leer y escribir.
Ángel Castro had Fidel raised amongst the children of sugar plantation workers. Many of these were Haitian and other Caribbean workers.
This, the one-room schoolhouse he attended with the children of the farm workers.
When he began, he had 4 years like listener, no a student, just listening.
He was just listening.
Yeah.
He was 4.
4 years.
And the story goes, he sat in the front row, center seat, transfixed.
He became so upset at the treatment of the workers on this farm by his dad that he threatened to organize a rebellion of the workers against his father if his dad didn't start paying them better. At that point, Castro was 12.
From this simple school, Fidel's family sent him to a Catholic boarding school in Cuba's second largest city, Santiago de Cuba, and then to the Jesuit-run Belén High School in Havana.
Él puede hacer alarde de ser el hombre que más memoria tiene que yo conozca. De modo que arrancaba las páginas del libro y lo leía después lo leía como si estuviera.
At the University of Havana, where Fidel arrived in 1945 to study law, the political atmosphere was so highly charged that it often turned to violence. Students fighting against corruption and injustice were targets of repression. Fidel entered the fray, but as a radical nationalist with a passion for social justice.
Nos formamos nosotros y se formó desde luego Fidel. Nosotros organizamos el movimiento estudiantil junto con el movimiento obrero.
It was also during these years in Havana that Castro first earned a reputation within wider Cuban society for his dissident actions. In the winter of 1946, he appeared in the pages of several newspapers, following his criticisms of the government and its corruption and violence. He subsequently developed extensive connections with numerous left-wing political groups within the country, notably the Unión Insurreccional Revolucionaria or Insurrectional Revolutionary Union. Castro's anti-American stance first manifested itself when he joined the Committee for the Independence of Puerto Rico. In the summer of 1947, Castro left university briefly to join a campaign to overthrow the right-wing government of Rafael Trujillo in the Dominican Republic. Castro was one of the leaders of a band of about 1,200 rebels who set off from Cuba for the Dominican Republic with the goal of overthrowing Trujillo. The effort, though, was quickly snuffed out by a combination of US, Cuban and Dominican forces, although Fidel escaped after he reputedly jumped overboard from the ship he was on into shark-infested waters, while during the course of 1948 he undertook a number of trips to Panama, Venezuela and Colombia to meet with left-wing revolutionary groups there, in particular in the capital of Colombia, Bogotá. In the late spring of 1948, he was central to efforts to set up a Pan-American Students' Conference, which would act in opposition to right-wing governments across Latin America. Meanwhile, back in Cuba, later that year, he married Mirta Díaz Balart, a philosophy student.
He was married to a young woman who was the daughter of one of the elites. That marriage, however, only lasted 6 years. He did, however, have a son from that marriage.
In the early 1950s, Castro established a law firm with 2 associates named Jorge Azpiazu and Rafael Resende. The firm was engaged in pro bono work to defend workers who had been mistreated.
In 1952, now a practicing lawyer, Fidel ran as a candidate for the Orthodox Party, an anti-corruption coalition. General Batista staged a coup to prevent an Orthodox Party victory. On the 26th of July, 1953, Fidel led an attack on the Moncada garrison in Santiago de Cuba. This marked the beginning of the armed struggle against Batista.
Pensábamos tratar de provocar un levantamiento nacional para el derrocamiento de Batista. Caso de no lograrse el levantamiento nacional, o en el caso de que Batista pudiera reaccionar con fuerzas superiores y atacarnos aquí en Santiago de Cuba, la idea nuestra era con las armas del cuartel Moncada marchar a las montañas y librar la guerra irregular en las montañas.
The operation had hardly begun when a group of Fidel's followers was surprised by a military patrol. 61 were killed, only 6 in combat. The rest were tortured and murdered after their arrest.
Que nos los devolvieron brutalmente heridos, destrozados, sin dientes. Aquello era una cosa horrible.
Then began what would become the most famous trial in Cuban history.
Fidel, en su alegato, está terminando su alegato, da así en la mesa con las manos y dice, condenadme, no importa, la historia me absolverá.
Fidel and 29 of his comrades were imprisoned on the Isle of Pines.
Yo tuve mi actitud de rebeldía, me aislaron. Tenía todo el tiempo para leer. Leía 12 horas, 14 horas, 16 horas. Y después nunca he tenido oportunidad de leer tantas horas seguidas.